The day I exposed my golden child sister's web of lies and watched her perfect world crumble, I always knew the day would come when I'd finally stand up to my sister. I just never imagined it would happen at my parents' 35th wedding anniversary party, with 63 witnesses and a PowerPoint presentation titled, The Truth About Amber. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up as Amber's younger sister was like living in perpetual eclipse. No matter what I did, her shadow always seemed to stretch just far enough to keep me in the dark. It wasn't just that my parents favored her, it was how seamlessly, how completely they bought into the narrative that Amber was exceptional while I was Will. Just there. The first memory I have of understanding this dynamic happened when I was 8. I'd spent weeks working on a science project about the solar system. My planets were meticulously painted styrofoam balls, each hanging at the correct relative distance from my yellow sun. I'd memorized facts about each planet, staying up late with my dad's astronomy book, carefully copying information onto index cards. The night before the science fair, I went to bed early, excited for the next day. When I woke up, I found Amber, then 12, putting the finishing touches on my project. She'd added glitter to the rings of Saturn and had replaced my handwritten cards with computer-printed facts. "What are you doing?" I asked, still groggy with sleep. "Helping you," she said with that smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Your project looked a little basic." When my mom walked in, she gasped in delight. "Oh, Amber, look how you're helping your little sister! Isn't that sweet?" "Richard," she called to my dad. Dad appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "That's my girl, always looking out for others." I stood there, watching as they admired my project, now claimed by Amber's improvements. When I tried to explain that I hadn't wanted help, that I'd done everything myself, my mom patted my head. "Don't be ungrateful, Ellie. Your sister spent her morning making your project better. You should thank her." That was the first time I clearly understood Amber wasn't just the favorite, she was untouchable, and I was expected to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention fell my way. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I got straight A's in middle school, my parents nodded and said, "Good job." When Amber got straight A's, there was a celebration dinner. When I made the swim team, there was a quick, "That's nice, honey." When Amber became captain of the debate team, my parents bought her a new laptop. But the real manipulation happened behind closed doors. Amber had perfected the art of being two different people. The golden, perfect daughter in front of our parents, and someone else entirely when they weren't looking. Like the time in high school when she borrowed my English essay on the Great Gatsby, the one I'd spent 2 weeks researching and writing, turn a slightly modified version to her AP literature class. She got an A. When I confronted her, she laughed. "It's not like you're gonna do anything with your writing anyway," she said, examining her perfect manicure. Besides, I had debate team and student council. I didn't have time to write some stupid paper about a book everyone's already analyzed to death. Or the time she told my first serious boyfriend that I'd been cheating on him. A complete fabrication. Because she thought he was taking up too much of my time when I should have been helping her with her colleague applications. He broke up with me without even giving me a chance to explain. When I confronted Amber, crying and devastated, she just shrugged. "You'll thank me later. He wasn't good enough for you anyway." When I told my parents what she'd done, they sighed and said, "Aber was just looking out for your best interests, honey. You know how boys can be at that age." By the time we reached adulthood, I developed a protective shell. I kept my achievements quiet, my relationships private, and my interactions with Amber to a minimum. I moved to Chicago after college, putting a comfortable 300 miles between myself and my family in Columbus, Ohio. I built a life that was distinctly mine, one that Amber couldn't touch, or so I thought. The turning point came 3 years ago. When I was 27, Amber was 31. I'd been working at a marketing firm for 5 years, slowly climbing the ladder, putting in extra hours and taking on projects nobody else wanted, when the position of creative director opened up. I threw everything I had into my application. I created a portfolio that showcased not just my work, but my vision for the department. I practiced my presentation until I could recite it in my sleep, and I got it. I actually got the job. The first person I called was my mom, not because I expected her to be particularly excited, but because it was what you did with big news. You told your family. "Oh, that's wonderful, Ellie," she said, and for once, I heard genuine pride in her voice. "We should celebrate when you come home next month for your father's birthday." For a brief, shining moment, I felt like maybe things had changed. Maybe as adults, my achievements could finally stand on their own merit without being compared to Amber's. That delusion lasted exactly 3 days. I was in the middle of a meeting with my new team when my phone started buzzing incessantly with text messages. I ignored it until the meeting ended, then checked to find 7 texts from my mother, each more frantic than the last. "Ellie, call me immediately. Why didn't you tell us about your drinking problem? Amber is so worried about you. She says you've been self-medicating for months. She found out from your coworker Jamie. We're here for you, honey. You don't have to face this alone. Your father and I think you should consider taking a leave of absence from work before they find out." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Drinking problem, self-medicating Jamie. I didn't even know anyone at work named Jamie. I called my mother immediately. "Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a drinking problem." "Oh, Ellie." My mother sighed, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Do you need help? Amber spoke with your coworker Jamie yesterday. She said you've been coming to work hungover, that you keep vodka in your desk drawer, and that everyone in the office is talking about it. She's worried you're gonna lose this new position before you even start." My blood ran cold. "Mom, there is no Jamie at my office. Amber made this up. Why would your sister lie about something like this?" My mother's voice took on that familiar defensive tone. "She's worried sick about you. She even called that treatment center in Michigan to see if they have openings." I closed my eyes, trying to control my breathing. "Mom, I swear to you, I do not have a drinking problem. I rarely drink at all. You can ask anyone who actually knows me." "Well, this Jamie person seems to know you quite well." "TRI no Jamie," I shouted, then immediately regretted it as heads turned in the office hallway. I lowered my voice. "Mom, Amber is lying. She's making this up because she can't stand that I got a promotion." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "I think you need to take some time to reflect, Ellie. My mother finally said, "Aber has only ever wanted what's best for you. I'm gonna have her send you that information about the treatment center." I hung up, my hands shaking with rage. This was a new low. Even for Amber, she wasn't just trying to steal my thunder. She was actively trying to sabotage my career by making my parents think I was an alcoholic who's about to implode at work. That night, I called my sister directly. "Hey, little sis," she answered, her voice syrupy sweet. "How are you feeling?" "Cut the crap, Amber," I said. "I know what you told Mom and Dad." "I'm just concerned about you," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "Everyone is." "Jamie called me so worried." "There is no Jamie," I interrupted. "You made her up." "Why would I do that?" Amber asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. She was good, I had to give her that. If I hadn't spent a lifetime decoding her lies, I might have actually believed her. "Because you can't stand that I'm succeeding," I said flatly. "Because for once in our lives, the attention might be on me instead of you." Amber laughed, a light, tinkling sound that had charmed teachers, boyfriends, and our parents for years. "Oh, Ellie, this paranoia isn't healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone about these delusions." And that's when something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, lose my temper way. It was quieter than that, more decisive. In that moment, I realized that Amber would never stop. She would continue to manipulate, lie, and sabotage me for the rest of our lives unless something changed. And the only person who could change things was me. "You know what, Amber? You're right," I said, keeping my voice level. "I think I do need help. Thanks for your concern." She paused, clearly thrown by my sudden capitulation. "Well, good. I'm glad you're finally listening to reason." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a plan. Amber had spent years carefully constructing a narrative where she was the perfect daughter and I was the screw-up. She'd been so successful because she controlled the flow of information to our parents, and because I'd never seriously fought back. That was about to change. I opened my laptop and created a new folder titled Project Truth. Then I began to document everything. Over the next year, I became a detective of my own life. I dug through old emails, text messages, and social media posts. I reached out to old friends, teachers, and even ex-boyfriends, asking them to share their recollections of interactions with Amber. I recorded phone calls with my sister legal in Illinois, where I lived, and saved every text and email. I created a timeline of Amber's manipulations, starting from that science project when I was 8 all the way to the fictional alcoholic Jamie. The pattern was clear, consistent, and damning. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I kept playing the role of the slightly cowed younger sister, the one who had admitted she needed help. I let Amber think she'd won again. Meanwhile, I excelled at my new job. I built a strong team, brought in new clients, and even won an industry award campaign we created for a nonprofit. I told my parents about none of it. As far as they knew, I was barely holding it together at work while getting help for my non-existent drinking problem. The opportunity to finally use my carefully gathered evidence came sooner than I expected. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary was approaching, and they were planning a big celebration at the country club in Columbus. Everyone would be there: aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who had watched Amber and me grow up. 2 weeks before the party, Amber called me. "So, for Mom and Dad's anniversary," she began without preamble, "I'm putting together a slideshow of family memories. I need you to send me any good photos you have." "Sure," I said. "That sounds nice." She continued. "I'm giving a speech. As the oldest, it makes sense for me to speak on behalf of both of us." I bit back my initial response. Actually, I was planning to say a few words myself. There was a pause. "Well, that might be redundant. Plus, you know how you get when you have to speak in public. Remember Cousin Sarah's wedding?" At Cousin Sarah's wedding 5 years earlier, I'd given a maid of honor speech that had received a standing ovation. Amber had fumed silently through the entire reception afterward. "I think I'll be fine," I said mildly. "I've been doing a lot of presentations at work lately." "Right, work," Amber said, her voice taking on a concerned tone. "Are you sure you're stable enough for this? It's a big day for Mom and Dad. We wouldn't want anything to overshadow their celebration." And there it was, the subtle reminder of my problems, the implication that I might embarrass the family. Classic Amber. "I promise I won't cause a scene," I said. "In fact, I think everyone will find what I have to say very interesting." After we hung up, I opened my Project Truth folder and began to prepare. If Amber wanted a slideshow, I'd give her one she'd never forget. The anniversary party was held in the grand ballroom of the Columbus Country Club, where my parents had been members for 20 years. Round tables draped in cream, colored linens filled the room, each centered with an arrangement of my mother's favorite flowers: pink peonies and white roses. A string quartet played softly in the corner, and waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I arrived early. Wearing a navy blue dress that I knew looked good on me, my Project Truth materials securely stored on a USB drive in my clutch. I had already spoken with the event coordinator, explaining that I had a special presentation for my parents and needed to make sure it was compatible with their ATV system. "No problem at all," the coordinator had said. "We'll have everything ready after dinner." Before the dancing starts, Amber arrived fashionably late, making an entrance in a stunning red dress, her husband Todd in tow. She kissed relatives and friends, working the room like a politician at a fundraiser. When she spotted me, she made her way over. "Ellie, you look nice," she said, her eyes quickly assessing my appearance. "Navy is such a safe choice." "Thanks," I said. "You look beautiful as always," she preened slightly. "This old thing? I picked it up in New York last month. Todd and I were there for a conference, and I just happened to walk past Saks." She launched into a detailed story about how the dress had practically fallen into her lap, a tale I was sure was at least partially fabricated. I nodded and smiled, playing my part one last time. Dinner was a 4-course affair featuring my parents' favorite foods. My father gave a touching speech about meeting my mother in college, their early struggles, and the life they'd built together. My mother wiped away tears as he spoke of his enduring love for her. It was genuinely moving, and for a moment, I questioned whether I was about to do the right thing. But then Amber stood up, tapping her knife against her glass to get everyone's attention. "As many of you know," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the room, "I've prepared a little tribute to my amazing parents." The lights dimmed and a slideshow began playing on the large screen at the front of the room. It was beautifully done. I had to admit, photos of my parents through the years, set to their favorite songs. But as the slideshow continued, I noticed something. I was barely in it. There were dozens of photos of Amber with our parents, at graduations, birthdays, vacations. But I appeared in only a handful and always at the edge of the frame, as if I were an afterthought. When the slideshow ended, Amber began her speech. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion that I knew was at least partly performative. "You've given me, given us," she added, gesturing vaguely in my direction, "so much. Your support has meant everything to me as I've built my career, my marriage, my life. I know I speak for both Ellie and myself when I say that we won the parent lottery." She continued for several minutes, telling stories about our childhood, stories that painted her as the perfect daughter and me as the troublesome one who needed constant guidance. She even referenced my recent struggles, saying how proud she was that I was finally getting the help I need. I saw my mother nod sympathetically, reaching over to squeeze my father's hand. Several relatives glanced in my direction with concerned expressions. When Amber finished, there was enthusiastic applause. She took a small bow, then gestured to me. "And now, I believe my sister has a few words to share as well." She returned to her seat, giving me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She clearly expected me to give a brief, forgettable speech that would pale in comparison to her polished performance. I stood and made my way to the front of the room, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I inserted my USB drive into the laptop connected to the projector. "Thank you, Amber, for that selective walk down memory lane," I began. "You're right that we should celebrate Mom and Dad today. They've given us so much, but I think it's time we were honest about what they've received in return." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. The title read, "The Truth About Amber, a 30-Year Study in Manipulation." A murmur ran through the room. Amber's smile froze on her face. "For as long as I can remember," I continued, "there have been two versions of our family, the one that exists in public and the one that exists in reality. Today, I'd like to reconcile those two versions." I clicked to the next slide, which showed two columns. On the left was a list of my achievements throughout school and college. On the right was a list of the ways Amber had either taken credit for them or minimized them to our parents. "Let me give you some examples," I said, my voice steady. I clicked through slides showing evidence, screenshots of texts, emails, and social media posts that proved my claims. I included testimonials from friends and former teachers who had witnessed Amber's behavior firsthand. Then I moved on to the more serious manipulations. The boyfriend she'd sabotaged, the job opportunities she'd interfered with, and finally, the completely fabricated drinking problem she'd convinced our parents I had. "There is no Jamie at my office," I said, looking directly at my parents. "There never was. I don't have a drinking problem. I've never had a drinking problem. What I have is a sister who couldn't stand that I was finally succeeding on my own terms." I played a recording of my phone conversation with Amber, where she'd essentially admitted to making up the story. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the water glasses. "I'm not sharing this to hurt anyone," I said, looking around at the shocked faces of my family members. "I'm sharing it because for 30 years, I've lived in a family where the truth was whatever Amber said it was, and I can't do it anymore." I turned to my parents, who sat frozen in their seats, my mother's hand pressed to her mouth, my father's face ashen. "Mom, Dad, I love you both, but you've been played. We all have, and it's time for it to stop." I clicked to my final slide, which showed a recent photo of me with my team at work accepting our industry award. This is who I really am. Not an alcoholic, not a failure, not someone who needs constant supervision and correction. I'm a successful, independent woman who is tired of being erased from her own family narrative. I closed my laptop and returned to my seat amid stunned silence. And then chaos erupted. Amber shot to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "This is ridiculous. Ellie has always been jealous of me. She's making all of this up." But her protests fell flat in the face of the evidence I'd presented. My Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, who had always had a soft spot for me, stood up. "I always wondered," she said quietly. "The way you talked about Ellie never matched the young woman I knew." My cousin Mark chimed in. "Remember when you told everyone Ellie cheated on her sites because her score was higher than yours? I never believed that." More voices joined in, sharing their own observations of Amber's behavior over the years. It was as if a dam had broken, and all the doubts and questions that family members had suppressed out of politeness or uncertainty came flooding out. Through it all, my parents sat in shocked silence. My mother was crying quietly. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Amber's husband Todd was staring at her with an expression I couldn't quite read, part confusion, part dawning realization. I remembered that they'd only been married for 3 years. He was just beginning to understand who he'd actually married. Finally, Amber did something I'd never seen her do before. She lost control completely. "You ungrateful little bitch," she screamed at me, her carefully cultivated image shattering like glass. "After everything I've done for you, you were nothing without me?" Nahiji, the room fell silent again. In that moment, everyone saw the real Amber. Not the perfect, generous older sister, but the manipulative, narcissistic person I'd known all along. My father stood up slowly. "Amber," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "That's enough, Daddy," she said, instantly switching tactics, her voice becoming small and hurt. "You can't possibly believe her. She's always been troubled. She's making this all up because she's jealous of me." My father shook his head. "The evidence speaks for itself, Amber. Those were your words we heard, your texts, your emails." He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "Ollie, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now, Dad," I replied. "This is a lot to process. I just couldn't live with the lies anymore." My mother was still crying, but she'd composed herself enough to speak. "All this time," she said, "we thought we were supporting both our daughters equally. We never realized." Her voice trailed off. Amber looked around the room, seemingly realizing that she'd lost her audience. Her perfect image had crumbled, and there was no rebuilding it. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, Todd trailing uncertainly behind her. The party effectively ended after that. Guests made awkward excuses and left in small groups, whispering among themselves. My parents' anniversary celebration had been irrevocably altered, and I felt a pang of regret about that, even though I knew it had been necessary. I stayed behind to help clean up and to talk with my parents. The three of us sat at a table in the now empty ballroom, surrounded by half-empty champagne glasses and wilting flower arrangements. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way," I said. "I never wanted to ruin your anniversary." My father reached across the table and took my hand. "You didn't ruin anything, Ellie. We did. Your mother and I, we failed you. We never saw it," my mother added, her voice hoarse from crying. "We believed everything Amber told us because it was easier than questioning her. We let her shape our perception of you, and that was unforgivable." "It's not unforgivable," I said. "But things have to change." They both nodded, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen by my parents. The aftermath of what my family now refers to as the anniversary revelation was messy and painful, as family reckonings often are. Amber refused to speak to any of us for months. When she finally did reach out, it was with a carefully crafted non-apology. "I'm sorry if you felt hurt by my actions." My parents insisted on family therapy, which Amber attended exactly twice before declaring it waste of time. She never admitted to any deliberate manipulation, maintaining that I had misinterpreted her attempts to help as something malicious, but the damage to her reputation was done. Extended family members who had once accepted her version of events now viewed her with skepticism. Friends who had witnessed her behavior over the years felt validated in their private concerns. And my parents, though they struggled with guilt over their role in enabling her, began the difficult process of establishing healthier boundaries. The most significant consequence for Amber came professionally. She had built her career as a pharmaceutical sales representative on the same charm and manipulation she'd used in our family. But without the unquestioning support she was accustomed to, her performance began to suffer. 6 months after the anniversary party, she was placed on probation at work. 3 months after that, she was let go. Her marriage to Todd didn't survive either. During the process of their divorce, he reached out to me for coffee. "I should have seen it sooner," he said, stirring his lad absently. There were signs. The way she talked about colleagues who got promotions instead of her. The stories about her ex-boyfriends that never quite added up. I just didn't want to believe that the woman I fell in love with could be so calculated. "She's very good at making people see what they want to see," I said. It wasn't much comfort, but it was the truth. As for my relationship with my parents, it's a work in progress. 30 years of established patterns don't change overnight. My mother still occasionally slips into old habits, making excuses for Amber or trying to pressure me into reconciliation. My father is trying harder, making a point to call me regularly and take an interest in my life and career. Last month, they visited me in Chicago for the first time. I showed them my office, introduced them to my team, and took them to dinner at my favorite restaurant. It was awkward at times, but also healing. At one point, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To Ellie," he said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "We're so proud of the woman you've become. Thank you for giving us a second chance to be the parents you deserve." I'm not naive enough to think that one dramatic confrontation fixed everything. Amber is still Amber, and my parents are still coming to terms with their role in our dysfunctional family dynamic. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm standing in my own light, not in someone else's shadow. And that's worth every uncomfortable moment it took to get here. Sometimes, the most profound revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about finally claiming the truth, even when it hurts. It's about refusing to participate in your own erasure any longer. It's about standing up and saying, "I am here, I matter, and I will not be written out of my own story ever again."